Hi everybody, I'm Lora Hart. Thanks for joining me for Tuesday Talks. Last week, or a couple of weeks ago, somebody asked me about how to do pinbacks with metal clay work. And so that brought up some thoughts for me. And when I think of myself as a maker, and specifically a jewelry maker, I think of myself as just that, a jewelry maker. My material of preference is metal clay. But sometimes you need to work with other kinds of materials. I know there are lots of you that think everything can be done with metal clay, everything can be done in the kiln, and for many people that's true. For me, I like to be able to add traditional metalsmithing techniques and skills to my metal clay work. I think that I want to use the right material for the job, the right process for the job, and I don't want to have to rely on figuring out how to do it with metal clay. So when you are making a pin connection of some kind, you can use metal clay for the actual connecting parts, the tube that the wire goes through and the catch. You could also learn to either fuse or solder pre-made tubing and cut a little piece of wire to use for the catch. Many times when we want to make something new and we're not really sure how, we like to ask other people, but I actually love teaching myself. I've been working with metal clay for 17 years, for those of you who don't know me very well. I used to be really prominent in the metal clay world. I've kind of quieted down a little bit recently, in the past few years. But I also, in addition to metal clay, I've taken quite a few individual 1 or 2 day metal smithing classes, and they've really helped. And over the 17 years, I have collected a number of metal smithing tools that are really, really helpful for me in my work. So when I say that I like to kind of teach myself different things, nobody taught me how to make pin findings, nobody taught me how to forge a pin stem. I kind of learned that on my own, and I learned on my own because I am always curious. I will go to YouTube and Google, and I will look at pictures, and I collect pictures on my Pinterest page, like this guy behind me that I guess you can't see very well. Oh, and now it's gone away. So I just want to let you know that looking at pictures is a really helpful educational tool. Lorena Angulo, who is one of our metal clay masters, she makes gorgeous jewelry with her traditional Mexican motifs. A couple of years ago, she put out a book called Behind the Brooch, where she shows the front of the brooch and the back of the brooch with all kinds of different makers, metal clay makers, traditional jewelry makers using traditional jewelry fabrication techniques. And it's a really wonderful, wonderful resource. It's available on Amazon. But she also has a Pinterest page on her Pinterest board, I guess it's called, where she has individual shots of the pages of her book. So if you're like me and you like to have the book in front of you so you can sit and have a lovely cup of tea and look at the book and really examine it, you might want to go to Amazon and buy that book, and you can also get a taste for it by going to Lorena Angulo's Pinterest page and looking for Behind the Brooch. On my Pinterest boards, I have something that I call Jewelry Class on the back, and that shows all kinds of different things on the back of jewelry. The back of jewelry is just as important as the front of your jewelry. So whether you're adding stones or textures or just making the back of it smooth and perfect, you want to pay attention to the back of your pieces. Okay, so back to making brooch findings. I went through a period where I was making a lot of brooches and doing a lot of different, isn't that cute? I have no idea who that little person is. It is not me. This is the front of it. I think that's actually on the cover of Lorena's book. Thank you very much, Lorena. Here's one that only has one stem. Some of them have two stems because they're so big. That's the front of that one. And I've also experimented with these little pin tacks. Those are called scatter pins, and I solder those on. So I'm going to change the angle of the camera to look at my bench top. You can buy, you can make your pin stems out of sterling silver if you harden it, or you can make it out of steel. And steel will never bend, it'll never go out of shape. It is a little bit difficult to use if you've never done it before. You have to use a little tiny bit more, more strength. This is my collection of steel wire that I got from a friend of mine who has a lot in her studio. I like to use wire that approximates 20 gauge. If you're making your pin stem out of sterling wire, you do want to use 20 gauge to go through most things. If it's a very heavy brooch or you're designing for a sweater, you might want to use a heavier gauge. But 20 gauge usually works pretty good for me. And when we're dealing, I have notes over here, when we're dealing with piano wire or music wire, which is steel wire that you can get on Amazon, you want to get 0.032 inches. 0.032 inches, and that corresponds to 20 gauge wire. 20 gauge wire is also 0.032 inches. So there is a company on Amazon who actually sells 12 inches of straight wire. They're called K&S Engineering. So you can find them. Most everybody else on Amazon and elsewhere coils the wire, and that makes it a little bit difficult for us to straighten. So next time I need wire, I will definitely be buying the straight wire, much easier to use. If you are using the steel wire, you would file the end into a point, which I'll be doing a tiny bit of demonstrating in a minute. And if you're starting with sterling, you want to do a little bit of forging first, and the forging will both taper the end and make the wire stronger because you're compressing it. You could also, if you wanted to, buy a draw plate. That is one of the metal smithing tools that I don't have yet that is on my wish list. And when you put a piece of, say, 18 gauge wire and draw it down through these tiny little holes, you can draw it down to 20 gauge. It makes it very, very straight and very, very strong because you're compressing it as you're doing it. So you might not have to do this forging that I'm going to show you. So let me move things around a little bit, and I will show you basically how to do some forging. All right, closing my computer, and let's turn this around and see if we can, well, So there is my bench block. Can you see it? There it is. All right, so I don't know that I'm going to be able to do this without having a holder, and my holder is too high and won't angle down. So when you're forging, you want to hammer on it, going around and around and around the wire. Let me put you back on my stand so that I don't have to hold you. Oh my gosh, people, you'll never come to another one, will you? Send me a heart if you don't mind all this nonsense I'm going through. Hopefully you don't mind. Ha! So this is a bench block that I got in an antique store, actually. But you can buy bench blocks. Here's one that you can buy at Rio Grande. Bench blocks are really great. When you move metal with a hammer, so the metal is your wire, this is your hammer, and this is a bench block. When you move metal with metal on metal, you're going to change the shape of it in some way, which is what you want if you're forging your pin stem. And you just hammer, hammer, tap, 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 and you'll see it getting thinner and you'll see it getting longer. And you only want to taper probably about 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch maybe. And then what you do is you put it in a bench pin. This is my bench pin. There it is. And I don't know if you can see right here, I have scribed a triangular tapered divot in there. And that's what I put my piece of wire in, and then I file it into a point. And I have never seen a pin forging, pin stem tutorial on YouTube. So because this Tuesday talk seems to be a little bit of a fail for me, maybe I will do that. I will make one and I'll put one on YouTube so that people can see what it's like when you're forging. So that is basically what I wanted to talk to you guys about today, that if you want to learn how to make something new, the best way to do it, honestly, is to try and figure it out yourself. You will learn better. You will learn what works for you. If you want to make a tube feature, so we've got a little tube up at the top, and we've got the catch down at the bottom. This particular tube is made out of commercial tubing, but you can also make one. Let's see if I have one. I probably do. This one, I don't even know if you can tell, is a little bit heftier than the other one, and that is a coil of clay. I taught how to make calibrated coils that correspond to card thicknesses on a recent craft cast. Oh, Allison, what is the name of your craft cast that I just did? Will you put that up somewhere for me? Because my brain is gone dead. So you can roll a coil, let it dry, cut it to the correct length, and then if you drill in to the middle and drill into the middle on each side, they will meet in the middle. If you drill in from one side and hope that you're going to come out the middle of the other side, you probably won't. I never have. So that's what I use as the tube. And I use with fine silver, I use a twist drill that is meant to make an 18 gauge hole. And when that shrinks, it shrinks down to 20 gauge. So that's what I use for the tube. And you can use a variety of different things for the catch part of it. I wanted to show you my favorite little catch. There is the catch. That is a coil that I rolled and then wrapped it around a cocktail straw to make basically a roll of jump rings, and then I cut them in half, and that is what I used, one of those little jump rings. So it is offset, and I cut part of it off. So there you go. So you just have to be ingenious about what you are going to be using for your, I guess they're not called findings. When we make them, they're not called findings. They're called findings when we buy them ready-made. So when you're going to build your parts, just think about how you want to do it. Look at pictures and experiment. When you're forging, experiment first with copper wire so you're not spending money on sterling silver wire. And just think a little bit and you can do just about anything you want. So thanks very much for joining me on this 4th of July holiday in 2017. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will come and visit me some more when I do more Tuesday Talks. If there's anything you'd like me to talk about, please leave a message on the comment section of this, and have a great weekend. Actually, the weekend's over. Have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.